Visharga. Sukadeva Goswami, at the end of the second canto, he speaks this verse, Atra Sargo Vishargascha. Find 10 topics that are about to be discussed in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the first of those topics is Sargo. Sargo means the creation by Krishna directly. And Vishargo is the sub-creation by Lord Brahma. So both of those are discussed in the next 8 chapters. So that's the second stage of the third canto. So what I described, you haven't been here, but I'm trying to follow Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's idea of breaking it up so that we can get an easier access to the whole necklace of this third canto. And ultimately, of course, by doing this way, if we go through all the different cantos, then by the 12th canto, we should have a very clear picture of the flow of this vast body of literature. We kind of like boil it down, so to speak, to get a thread, to get a structure. And then it's not so intimidating. Then it doesn't look like so much, how will I ever get into that in one lifetime? So that's the purpose of this, defining these stages. And then yesterday, we discussed, in connection with this Sarga and Visharga, we discussed something of the personality of Lord Brahma. Because we've already discussed the personality of Vidura, we've discussed the personality of Maitreya, we've discussed the personality of Uddhava. So it was correct also to discuss the personality of Lord Brahma. So I found on the direction of the authority on this Vilap Kusumanjali, who actually is Gopi Janavallabha. He's been reading this Vilap Kusumanjali for something like 17 years. This is all he reads, all he listens to, all he thinks about. And he told me immediately where this commentary by Srila Gurudev was about Lord Brahma. So just to have it clear from Gurudev, Gurudev is saying that Lord Brahma is in Dasya Ras. And actually he's so far away he can't even approach the gopis, in fact. So Gurudev puts it in very nice context. He's describing one verse written by Prabodhananda Saraswati. I'm just going to read this verse and then we're going to go back into our Lord Varaha pastimes today. So Prabodhananda Saraswati has written this verse, Yo Brahma Rudra Sukha Narad Bhishma. And Gurudev is saying that Brahma, Narad, Bhishma, Shukadev Goswami, they are not qualified to enter into that Vilas Kunj or in Krishna's Leela. That Brahma is so far away. He is not anyone of Braj. That's not his mood. He's got a specific function of creation in the mode of passion. In Aishwarya, it doesn't enter. His Ishtadev is Garvadakshay Vishnu. That's the personality who he had darshan of. That's not even Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha, even though we're going to discuss today how he understands the Vaikuntha planets, because he describes the beautiful activities of the Four Kumaras going into Vaikuntha. So he understands that aspect of Vaikuntha. But in Madhurya, he hears about it, he knows about it, he offers pranams to it, but he comes as the hill in Varshana. Gurudev will explain this here. He is not anyone of Braj, but he wants that he should be any grass or anything in Vrindavan. And if not in Vrindavan, then anywhere in Braj. So it's not specific like Gurudev is describing. Uddhava is very specific. Uddhava wants the dust from the gopis' lotus feet. Actually, he wants one particle of dust from Sri Radha's lotus feet. That is what his... Because Uddhava was there. Even though Uddhava is a Jnani Bhakta, we have to see all this differentiation. Only I know that Srila Gurudev has given all these distinctions. I don't know that the other Acharyas have been as explicit as Gurudev has about their personalities and where they fit in, etc. But Gurudev is very particular. He gave so many years of his teaching to describe these differences between Aishwarya, Dwarka, Ayodhya, Goloka, Vrindavan, Gokul, etc. And if not the dust of the gopis, then anyone of Vrindavan. But Uddhava says that I want to be the grass in Vrindavan, Braja, and only want the dust of the gopis. So both are unqualified to enter the rasa, because they only want dust. It's the truth. That's what they're praying. We'll get what we desire, whatever it is that you want. That's why bhajan is so essential, to be focused on the prayojan, or what is your heart's desire. This is why Gurudev would say, make us repeat constantly. Now say after me, I want to be a Palya Dasi of Srimati Radharani. How many times did he say that? He's trying to impress it into the system. But it's like a foreign word to us. We don't even know what that means. But still the impression is coming. Still the impression has been pushed there by someone who is so qualified to do that pushing. So he's defining here, Uddhava and Lord Brahma, that they don't have that same impression. They have not received that impression. So So both are unqualified to enter the rasa, because they only want dust. Narad also, he is not a Braj of gopis or anything. So what to speak of others? Brahman, Durgana, Gatir, Rishabhanu, Jaya. They can at any time take darshan of Krishna, but Brahma only from far away. Uddhava can serve Krishna, but not with the gopis. He can serve Krishna, Dwarkadish and Mathuresh, and he can go to Braj and only hear something, but he cannot enter in directly in that Braja Leela. We have never seen or heard about Narad also. So Vrishabhanu Nandini, Srimati Radhika, Kinkaris are very far away. Are very far away from them. But I want that. He's saying that I, in the sense of we as sadhaks, want that, because I have some greed for that. I know that I am not qualified, but yet I want nothing except that. I want to be the Palya Dasi of Srimati Radhika, to serve them both, Jugal, in Kunja Seva and other Seva. So this is a deeper appreciation of the position and mood, bhav, character of Lord Brahma. It doesn't diminish slightly the excellence of his seva to Krishna in this world. It just defines clearly where he is in the transcendental order of things, because it's such a vast realm that we're talking about. We have to see that. I think it was yesterday, we discussed the calculation of time. So we see that vastness of time is described on these pages of the Bhagavatam. And also this aspect of our own personalities within that space of time. And see simultaneously how exalted and fortunate we are to have access to this rasik knowledge. It's not a small thing, I've said many times. We take it for granted because we've been living in one sangha for 20 odd years and people talk about it generally. But how many people even in India know about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for example? It's very, very rare. This is rare, what I have just read today. It's very rare that people will accept it. It's like you can hear about it, but how much will you embrace it? It's like there are many Rasik Vaishnavas living in Vrindavan, but is everybody interested in those topics? Most people are not. Most people will settle for something that they can just sort of get their heads around, so to speak, or they can focus on. But going into too esoterics, they won't go there. They won't leave it. Gurudev was walking amongst so many people, and how many were actually attracted to the heart of what he was giving? How many were ready to actually give up any attachment to this material realm? Our sense of importance, our material knowledge, etc. All that has to be washed away. All that is really not important in this realm of deep rasa that Gurudev has just described.
Only not important, it's impediment. These are impediments to enter that realm.
That's right. It trips you up. It has to be, and it's very hard. Something you've cultivated for, say, 20 or 30 years as a sadhak, all of a sudden you have to just drop it. We have to work at these things. We have to hear constantly about these topics, actually, to become detached or liberated from any sort of material conception. But this idea of Gurudev pushing this mood, and throughout the pages of the Bhagavatam, this truth is there. This same truth that Gurudev is speaking is there. It needs to be brought out by Srila Gurudev, by the Rasikacharyas like Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. I said in the beginning of this how at every single excuse Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is looking to describe Braj and the moods of Braja Prem. And he's also saying constantly that Krishna is pleased with this scripture. This is Krishna directly himself. So Krishna also has a taste for Vaikuntha. Otherwise he wouldn't have it. But is that what we want? Is that what the sadhak want? Is that the highest potential? By some amazing fortune, we've come in contact with this very esoteric truth. It's not an accident. It's due to our previous sanskar, whatever. Not only that, but we've been able to accept it. How many people came and heard and went away and did not accept it, could not embrace that deepest sweetness. It was too much of a challenge. More went away than actually remained. Okay, so that's something extra about Lord Brahma that I just wanted to add, because we were talking about him yesterday. So that was a reading from Vilap Kusumanjali, verse 72 at the end. Also in Vilap Kusumanjali in verse 19, at the end there's a long description also about Lord Brahma being in Dasya Ras. So we should read those commentaries and understand who is this exalted person.
Should I wait for questions till the end?
If it fits everything, then ask it.
I'm just, where our Swarup is Manjari, or most of us, as we've been told by Gurudev. Some indication has been given. Otherwise,
maybe we should leave it till the end then.
But if Brahmaji is in our Guru Parampara,
he's our Adi Guru. He's the Guru of our Gurus.
How is it that he's in Dasya Ras when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu...
Very good question. No problem, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has reconciled this himself by... Guru means that person who tells us how to behave correctly, how to understand what are the highest conceptions. So Lord Brahma, he also knows what is the highest conception, except he doesn't have that adhikar to actually go there. He doesn't have that greed to go there because he's so preoccupied with this enormous service that he has to do here. It's like, for example, you might get someone who's very qualified and then they're building temples all their lives. You know, they don't actually have time to sit down and do some proper focused bhajan. Or they're running around everywhere doing so many busy, important things, but they don't have time to actually sit down. And what have our acharyas given us? They don't really address that significantly or deeply. Not that Lord Brahma is anything like that, but Lord Brahma understands and knows about Krishna in Vrindavan. He stole the cowherd boys. He knows all about Mother Yashoda binding Krishna. He knows about Madhurya Bhav. Just like Uddhava even spent time at Uddhav Kyeri, 7 months with the gopis, hearing their Divyanmad, their Chitra Jalpa, their bewildered talks of separation. And yet he's still not eligible to take that position of Palyadasi, even though he saw it straight in front of him. I asked Gurudev directly one time this question, you're telling us that we should go beyond Uddhava? He said, yes, because you are like clay. I can mold you how I want. That was his answer. Of course, we have our fixed sthāyi bhav, but still, it's a very deep subject matter. But it's all supported through the Bhagavatam pastimes. Nothing is separate. We can't say, oh, we're talking about Lord Varaha today, but actually this has got nothing to do with Braja Prem. Actually, it has. It's all connected. So yesterday we reached the point where Lord Brahma had become unhappy that the planets were not becoming populated. And then all of a sudden in front of him manifested this beautiful personality of Manu, and his wife Satarupa manifested. And he gave them the duty to populate the planet. And then this is Swayambhuva Manu, the first Manu. And then Manu came to Lord Brahma and said, oh, but the earth has sunk into the ocean. What can I do about that? And as Lord Brahma was thinking how to raise Mother Earth out of the ocean, then a little, where is it, from his nose came a little like a black thing to begin with, as big as a thumb. And then it just grew and grew into this beautiful Sweta Varaha, this white Varaha. And then all Lord Brahma and his sons were looking at this personality, wondering, who is this amazing, astonishing personality? And then Lord Varaha began to roar. And the sound of that roar was so ecstatic for the devotees, they suddenly realized, this is Vishnu himself. Then they began to chant very, very beautiful prayers in glorification. And then it's described how he dived with his 2 hoofs into the ocean. It's described how the ocean felt like it was cracking in 2. It split so strongly. It was like 2 arms came out of the ocean. And the ocean cried out, oh, save me, you're going to split me in 2. Because Lord Varaha was like a mountain, huge, plunging to the depths of this Garbhodak ocean, finding the Mother Earth by his smell, and then raising her on his tusks. And in that chapter, which is chapter 13, it's described that he killed Hiranyaksha with his chakra. Hiranyaksha was in the water. These 2 sons of Diti, of Kashyapa, he was in the water, abusing Lord Varaha. And Lord Varaha just nonchalantly kills him with his chakra, and then raises the earth and puts her correctly in her balanced position, and then receives all the glorification from all the demigods and Lord Brahma, and then he goes back. So that's the first description of Lord Varaha. And then Vidura, he begins to ask very beautiful questions about how the earth actually got in that condition, and what were the circumstances that led to Varaha's appearance. And then Maitreya Rishi begins to talk about Chakshu Manu, the Chakshush Manu, which is 7 Manus on from Swayambhuva Manu. So the first Manu he was describing was Swayambhuva. Now he begins to talk about Chakshush Manu. So he jumps like 7 Manus and begins to describe about Shyam Varaha, the reddish Varaha or blackish Varaha, not Sweta Varaha. And then Lord Brahma goes right back to the beginning to describe clearly the circumstances that brought Lord Varaha there. he starts to describe initially the impregnation of Diti. This is chapter 16, I think, chapter 16 or 17, 16, which is the impregnation of, chapter 14, the pregnancy of Diti, when her co-wife is Aditi, who has so many auspicious sons. So she also wants a son. She hasn't had a son at this time, and she approaches Kashyapa Muni at a most inauspicious time. And of course, this is the arrangement of the Lord, that she should feel aroused greatly to actually have sexual union with Kashyapa Muni at this inauspicious time. And Kashyapa Muni is actually performing his yajna. And as I described yesterday about the inauspiciousness of the twilight time, how that is an inauspicious time. That's the time when the ghosts, etc., are all around. If you ever take rest between 5 and 7, you might wake up a little bit disturbed. You shouldn't sleep in that time when it's on sunset. Sleep before or after. But during that time, it's when Lord Shiva is wandering around riding his bull Nandi, and all the hoblins and goblins and ghosts, etc., are all with him. And if you rest at that time on sunset, you're likely to have quite a disturbed sleep. It's not that's the time we should have the arti. This is Gora arti time at this time. The devotees perform devotional activities to offset that inauspiciousness at that time. Of course, the materialist, he thinks, great, now I can enjoy my senses. So it's the most inauspicious time in the material world. It's when all the dacoits come out. I was describing this yesterday. So she approaches him at this inauspicious time, and Kashyapa Muni, he tries to pacify her with solicitous words and tries to, calm her down and everything, but she just won't have it. And eventually it's described that she tugs at his clothing. This is what's described on the pages, that she becomes so afflicted by Cupid's arrows. Because this is Krishna's arrangement, because he wants these two demons to take birth. So he's arranging it like this. So then Kashyapa Muni is described, goes to a secluded place, and he has union with Diti at that time. And then straight after, Kashyapa Muni, he comes back and is completing his meditation and his sacrifice. And immediately after her passion has been spent, then Diti, she becomes so remorseful that she actually did this at such an auspicious time. And then Kashyapa Muni, he says, because he had told her previously, he said, if we engage in this union at this time, Lord Shiva is wandering around on his bull Nandi, and he will witness this, and you will have all bad fortune come to you and your offspring. So after this union, Diti becomes very afraid that she's invoked the wrath of Lord Shiva, and she starts piteously saying prayers to Lord Shiva to please forgive her for her sinful nature. And she comes in front of Kashyapa after the union and begs his forgiveness. And Kashyapa says, actually, you will give birth to 2 sons who will terrorize all the devotees and all the planets for so many years. He starts to describe the shocking nature of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And of course, Diti becomes totally morose with this. But, he says, they will both be killed by Vishnu. And then Diti, because she's the wife of Kashyapa, becomes very happy that they will both be killed by Vishnu. And then, when Kashyapa sees her remorseful nature, then he says, actually, because you have repented like this, there will be a great benediction that your grandson, he will be a great devotee of Krishna, and he will be famous throughout the ages. So then she's quite pacified, because that's the birth of Prahlad, of course, who comes from Hiranyakashipu. So then she becomes quite pacified. But then it's described how she retains the semen of Kashyapa in her womb for 100 years, not wanting to give birth to these 2 demons. She holds that back. And those two demons, eventually, it's described in the last years of that pregnancy, how the light of the sun becomes covered by the potency coming out from her womb of these two demons. And then eventually, these two twins are born. First is Hiranyaksha, who's described as the youngest because he's actually sitting behind the eldest. So when you have twins, the first one that comes is not the eldest as we think materially, but actually it's the youngest, because the first one, elder, is behind the first one. So the first one was Hiranyaksha, that's the younger one, and then the second one is Hiranyakashipu. And then those two demons are described having frames like iron, and they're just enormous, and they start wandering around the planet, creating total havoc. Then at this time, Vidura, he's inquiring, well, why are they here? Where do they come from, etc.? And then Lord Brahma, he begins to speak the narration of the Four Kumaras. How? Because the Four Kumaras, they represent the four principles of religion. They embody the four principles of religiosity. So the first is embodying the principle of Sankhya philosophy. Then the second is yoga philosophy. The third is vairagya, and the fourth is tapas. So these great sages, they embody these principles. That's why they didn't want to procreate, as Lord Brahma had manifested them for. Because by this knowledge, they were able to push their semen upwards to the brain. So they felt no desire to go into that grihastha ashram and procreate. So all these are lessons within themselves, and the commentaries and purports are beautiful to actually become inspired by in our practices here. So then it's described, because of their great potency and strength, they could wander anywhere at will. And they came to the gates of Vaikuntha. And they quite easily just walked into this transcendental realm of Vaikuntha. It's described how they went through 6 gates of Vaikuntha, unchecked by anybody. Then they came to the 7th gate, and then they were checked by these 2 guards. These 2 guards, they just stood there blocking their way. And the Kumaras at that time, they became agitated because they had been checked, and they had understood that everything in this realm is an emanation from Krishna and total, supreme, absolute harmony. How can there be some discord? And who were these apparent imposters who were creating this discord in the land of Vaikuntha? They said directly, you must be imposters. Somehow or other you come here and you're acting as gatekeepers, but you're not gatekeepers. So we should actually curse you, because you shouldn't even be here. Because of their purity, they understood that this was actually, a grave offense to check them. And then they cursed the sages, they cursed the gatekeepers, Jai and Vijay. And then when Jai and Vijay realized that they had been cursed by Brahmanas, then they became very, very afraid, because it's described there is nothing in existence that can counteract a Brahmana's curse. It cannot be counteracted. It can be added or changed, or something like when Narad cursed the 2 sons of Kuvera, Naligriva, and etc. And but then at the end he said, yes, but you'll be liberated by Krishna. So you can soften it. So the sages, they cursed them. And then immediately Krishna and Lakshmi came to that spot. And there's beautiful pastime here where Krishna is apologizing to the 4 Kumaras. He said, a servant is the same as the master. If the servant has committed an offense, then the master also must take responsibility for that offense. So Krishna himself, in such a humble mood, is actually praying to the Kumaras to please forgive him for this offense. And then the Kumaras, they become very bewildered, because they hear this beautiful language and words spoken by the Lord, and none of their gyan can actually comprehend what is he really saying. Is he actually angry with us for doing this? Or is he genuinely pleased that we did this? They can't understand his real intention, even though his words are so beautiful. It's bewildering for them. They can't figure it out with their knowledge. And then they question the Lord further, and the Lord speaks very beautifully, explaining that actually he is satisfied with this curse. This is correct punishment for these two gatekeepers. They must endure that. And then he explains, Krishna explains, actually they are suffering ultimately from the curse of Lakshmi Devi. Because one time Lakshmi Devi wanted to come to see me while I was resting, and the two gatekeepers stopped Lakshmi Devi coming to see her Lord who was resting. So Lakshmi Devi was harboring this, feeling of animosity towards Jai and Vijay. So this was the ultimate reason for this curse, it's described. In the Bhagavatam, this is what's described on these pages in chapter 15. And then everybody becomes pacified except Jai and Vijay, who have to plummet into the material world. They're asked, do you want 7 births as devotees or do you want 3 births as demons? And they opt for 3 births as demons because they'll get quicker back. But ultimately, underneath all this, it's Krishna's desire to sport, this viraras. Krishna wants to sport with someone who has some strength. So someone coming from Vaikuntha has the sort of strength that he will become, he will enjoy that sport, with those demons. So it was ultimately Krishna's desire that transpired this entire Leela. And then these 2 sons, they take that birth in Diti's womb. And then it's described how they manifest from Diti's womb after 100 years. And then Hiranyaksha, the younger brother, he begins, as I described, to take out so much gold from the planet. And when the planet becomes imbalanced because of that, then it sinks into the Garbhodak ocean. Because we've described, like today, these miners and so on, they're taking out so many things from the planet, they have no idea actually that the planet is balanced, in a very high, it's like a bird that flies, it's total balance, If you suddenly clip one of its wings, it's right out of balance. So simultaneously, within the Earth planet are all these different minerals and ores, etc. And if you mine excessively out, then it becomes imbalanced. So Hiranyaksha took out so much gold from the planet. So it sank. And then Lord Brahma, again, as he was in the Swayambhuva Manu era, contemplating how to raise the earth again out of the ocean. So it's the second time in his day that it's gone. And then again, from his nose is described, comes this manifestation of Lord Varaha. It's very interesting how they both come in the same way. The Sweta Varaha and the Sham Varaha. They both come out from Lord Brahma's nose. And then again, this huge manifestation of Lord Boar Varaha takes place. And again, he roars. And then all these sons of Lord Brahma and all the demigods, they again begin chanting beautiful praise, understanding who he is. It's describing like he's a huge, huge person, and his tail is just whipping all the clouds away and so on. Anyway, very spectacular appearance. And then again, he dives into the ocean, and again the ocean feels like it's cut in half. But at this time, Hiranyaksha is not killed with the chakra, which he was in the first one. He actually begins to deride Krishna, to insult him. Very harsh, piercing words to Krishna. Oh, why are you running away? What sort of person are you? You're running away from battle, you're afraid of me? And he's running behind, taunting him. But Varahadev doesn't listen. He carefully places the earth again back in its position. And then he turns to Hiranyaksha. And then he just totally abuses Hiranyaksha. And then they begin to fight. They both have clubs. And it's described how Hiranyaksha is so confident of his ability because he has a benediction of immortality, just like Hiranyakashipu. They both had benedictions from Lord Brahma. It's described that he also has a benediction of immortality. But there are loopholes, as Gurudev describes. And then Hiranyaksha comes with his club, but then he misses Krishna. And then they begin this amazing battle. And all the demigods are there witnessing this battle. Because Hiranyaksha has caused such a disturbance on the planet. He's actually killed Vaishnavas, he's disturbed sages, he's rained down pus and blood, etc. on their yagyas. I mean, sometimes if we ever feel that we're inconvenienced by the world around us, we should remember how inconvenienced they were in previous times, how the devotees were inconvenienced, millions of years ago. We should bear that in mind. Anyway, this battle rages, and at one point during the battle, Lord Brahma becomes anxious because night is approaching. And with the approach of night, twilight again, then the mystic abilities of Hiranyaksha increase. He gets nourished by that darkness, the demoniac forces. So he begs Varaha to quickly kill this demon. He's saying, this demon is so insignificant, just kill him. And then Lord Varaha, on hearing those prayers of Lord Brahma, he just smiles very sweetly. Even amongst this heavy battle, he just smiles sweetly to show his transcendental nature. Even though he's involved in this Vira Ras, still his personality of sweetness is actually there, and he communes with Lord Brahma very sweetly. And then he runs at Hiranyaksha to smash him. But in smashing his club, this time he drops his club. And it's described this golden spinning, illuminating club drops down. And then Hiranyaksha, he, observing the etiquette of battle, puts his club aside and is ready to use his trident. But Krishna, meanwhile, has invoked his Sudarshan chakra. And when the trident comes from Hiranyaksha, Krishna's Sudarshan chakra just chops it to pieces. And then Hiranyaksha, because evening time has already come, and then Hiranyaksha starts invoking all these illusory like horror things, like raining stones, raining pus, mad women with their hair all out and naked, demonesses, coming in front of Krishna, and horrendous sounds, everything auspicious. He's just pulling together all these auspicious, inauspicious, things? What's the word for it? Inauspicious happenings. And then Krishna, again with his Sudarshan chakra, he just cuts through all the illusion. After he's let it go for a little while, just to frighten the demigods, then he cuts through it and lets it go, completely dispels it. And then Hiranyaksha, he again picks up his club, but and again Krishna, Varaha has his club, and again they crash together, and this time Hiranyaksha drops his club. So then Krishna picks up the club of Hiranyaksha and offers it back to him. And then this really insults Hiranyaksha. He can't handle this at all. And then he puts aside the club and he comes at him with his fist. He has fists like iron. And he tries to embrace Lord Varaha and bear hug him like that. And he runs to embrace him like this. And then he finds that Lord Varaha is actually outside of his embrace. And he becomes very bewildered by this. And then he starts punching Krishna on the chest, Lord Varaha on the chest. And then at that time, Krishna decides, right, that's enough. And just with his left hoof, he hits him behind the ear, smashes him behind the ear. And immediately that's enough to kill Hiranyaksha. And then he tumbles down, and he's slain completely. All his jewels are all over the place. And he's just smashed down. And then all the demigods, they come forward carefully because they're not quite sure that he's actually dead, because he's a ferocious demon. And they see that the effulgence is still within the body of Hiranyaksha because the hoof of Varahadev is touching his body still. It's still connecting with his body. So there's some illumination there in his body. And then eventually Varahadev takes his foot away, and then all the luster immediately fades from Hiranyaksha, and they understood this demon has died. And then the sages begin to glorify Lord Varahadev. Very, very beautiful prayers, very wonderful prayers. They begin to glorify this personality, Varahadev. And then Varahadev accepts the Pushpanjali of those beautiful prayers, and then he goes back to Vaikuntha Loka. In Vaikuntha Loka, he has his own planet, and there are so many personalities who are just constantly worshipping him and adoring him in this form of Varahadev. So this is an amazing avatar of Krishna. One of the first avatars. The first two are Matsya and Kurma. But those two avatars are just performing pastimes in the higher realms, in Swagaloka, when they're churning the Kurma comes, when they're churning the ocean of milk. The Mandara mountain has to sit on the back of Kurma. And Matsya avatar comes at the very end of when the inundation is there, to actually pull Satyavat Muni's boat with the animals, etc. At that time, that's when Matsya appears. But then the first avatar that's appearing in connection with the earth directly is Lord Varahadev. So this is described in the third canto. So as I said previously, the Bhagavatam really only begins to unfold the topics in the third canto. Up until the third canto, in the second canto, there's the conversation between Narad and Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma is repeating the Chatushlokis that he heard from Krishna. So the scene is sort of set in the second canto. But in the third canto, the actual description of Sarga and Visarga are unfolded. So this is all connected with that unfoldment of the creation of the worlds and the first avatar. So this is the first incarnation that's described in detail is Varahadev, and that is in 7 chapters. So I've just really made it very brief in this description. Of course, there are many, many profound teachings amongst this pastime, particularly between Sanat Kumar and the Kumaras and Krishna in Vaikuntha. That whole mood, how is that mood? How is it that the Kumaras could actually go there? How is it that Krishna allowed that pastime to happen? What were Krishna's feelings actually at that time? So, and there's a beautiful description of Vaikuntha also in these chapters when the Kumaras are walking through. Very beautiful description. So this is the knowledge that is there in the Bhagavatam. This is what we see. This is what we can imbibe and experience by taking this Bhagavatam. So that's the end of the Varaha pastime. I said it quicker than I was expecting to say it. So, does anyone want to question anything about that?
What are the teachings?
Huh?
You said there's many teachings.
So many teachings in the sense of that the Kumaras, they were unhappy that they had given way to anger or agitation with the gatekeepers, and they were ready to retract that curse. They were actually feeling bad about that. They were feeling that all the residents of Vaikuntha were self-realized souls, which is what they are. But they were feeling somewhat bewildered by allowing themselves to become agitated. So there's so many lessons in that about self-control, etc. Even though these personalities are the epitome of self-control, yet they gave in to that quality of anger. So we see many examples in Bhagavatam where the sages, they become angry. And this anger, Maharaj Yudhisthira is describing at the end of the Mahabharata war. He said all these millions of men have been killed because of anger. And he condemns this quality of anger. And we should know that this quality of anger can completely take away all of our sadhana and bhajan. If you perform, say, 3 or 4 hours of sadhana or bhajan in the morning, then you become angry or disturbed. Usually what is the cause of the anger is our false ego, that we're being frustrated. Somehow our senses are being frustrated. We're not getting what we wanted. We're not able to actually detach ourselves from the circumstance and just accept what has happened. So this quality of anger is very much, condemned in the jiva. And how to, as we said yesterday also, it's a fundamental covering of the jiva. Anger after frustration. Lord Brahma, we described yesterday in the 12th chapter, he puts that covering onto the jiva. Those 5 nascent engagements we spoke yesterday. Illusion about the material world, illusion about myself, thinking that I'm the possessor of anything in this world, anger after frustration, and fear of death. These are like coats that Lord Brahma puts over the jiva, so we have that to purify. That's not so simple. I think another wonderful lesson is actually when you see normally a pig, it's not like so attractive. But when you think of Lord Boar, when you think of Lord Varaha, somehow it's so attractive. Lord Varaha is so attractive. Like Lord Nrsimhadev is so attractive. He's so beautiful. Even though he's in that body of a hog, whatever. It's just it's Krishna himself. So whichever form Krishna comes in is so attractive. And when he roars, that hearing the sound of Krishna is very enlivening and exhilarating for the devotees when you're hearing Lord Varaha roar. It's actually described at the end of this that if anyone describes this or hears this or reads this, then all auspiciousness will always come in his life to hear this pastime of Varahadev. So this pastime is very powerful in dispelling all negativity within the heart of the jiva. So it's very important that periodically, I've heard Gurudev, I'm sure Vichitri has also many times discuss and speak the glories of Lord Varaha on his appearance day. It's very wonderful. It usually happens on a conjunction tithi, but I've heard often Srila Gurudev talk with great animation and great happiness about the pastimes of Lord Varaha. The devotees, the Vaishnavas, get great joy in hearing the defeat of the demons. It's great to hear victory to Krishna and his devotees. We like to hear that, So that's the pastime of Lord Varaha. So after this pastime, if no one else has any comment about that.
Well, I just wanted to say that pigs are actually very intelligent. So that might help to appreciate them.
Well, this one, he's not a pig, but he's in the body of a pig. But, yeah, pigs.
No, but you were saying they're not very nice to look at.
Not so attractive.
Yeah.
I mean, their habits and what they do, yeah. But they just eat stool, right? That's their diet, Wet stool or dry stool, That's what they love. That's not very, Wonderful what? They clean up all the stool. Yeah, they do. They do. They're addicted to eating anything. So, this takes us to the end of the third stage, as Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has described. And now, again, he goes back into the Sarga and Vishagra for one chapter. And this is a very beautiful chapter. And I'll just read a little bit of this chapter. This is, again, Lord Brahma and his creation. And in this chapter was, as I described yesterday, this, I can read some of this pastime to you. So Vidura, after he's heard about Lord Varaha, then he starts to inquire more about the creation of the Lord. And again, in this chapter 20, then the creation by Krishna is again described. So this is about the third or fourth time we're getting this description of the creation. It's such a phenomenal event or activity that we need to hear it a number of times to, I mean, how can we accept it to begin with? This enormous personality of Mahavishnu breathing out all the universes and then expanding into all of those universes as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and then from his navel coming the lotus flower. This is extraordinary. So repeatedly we have to hear this pastime of Krishna's creation. This is all called Sarga. This is how it's described, Sarga. And then we described yesterday how those 5 coverings are manifested. And then Lord Brahma, he feels disgust for putting those 5 coverings over the jiva, because it wasn't a very positive activity. And it's saying, out of disgust, Brahma threw off the body of ignorance, and taking this opportunity, yakshas and rakshasas sprang for possessions of the body, which continued to exist in the form of night. Night is the source of hunger and thirst. I read these for the purpose to give those who haven't read closely the Bhagavatam regularly an idea of what are the truths inside the Bhagavatam, what is here within the Bhagavatam. This is why I'm reading it, because I know that not everybody reads it all the time. Overpowered by hunger and thirst, they ran to devour Brahma from all sides and cried, "Spare him not, eat him up." Brahma, the head of the demigods, full of anxiety, asked them, "Do not eat me, but protect me. You are born from me and have become my sons. Therefore you are yakshas and rakshasas." He then created the chief demigods, who were shining with the glory of goodness. He dropped before them the effulgent form of daytime, and the demigods sportingly took possession of it. I described this yesterday. Lord Brahma then gave birth to the demons from his buttocks, and they were very fond of sex. Because they were too lustful, they approached him for copulation. The worshipable Brahma first laughed at their stupidity, but finding the shameless asuras close upon him, he grew indignant and ran in haste out of great fear. He approached the Supreme Lord, who bestows all boons and dispels the agony of his devotees and of those who take shelter of his lotus feet. He manifests his innumerable transcendental forms for the satisfaction of his devotees. These are the instructions. These are the specific instructions. Between the pastimes, a verse like this is the specific to take shelter of Krishna under any circumstances. Krishna is the orchestrator of everything. To come to that point of Sharanagat to him, always, always. Gurudev was once asked, how can we tell if our devotion is growing, if it's increasing. And he responded immediately, if you're always taking shelter of Krishna, if you always know that he is the controller and orchestrator of everything, if your life is surrendered to his will, then we're peaceful in all circumstances. It may not be to our material advantage, some particular thing, but we're not interested in our material advantage anymore. Prabhupada used to say, when you think you have the material advantage, know that Maya Devi is very close. When you think, oh, now I have my nice little room, my heater and everything's, really, really, then Maya Devi's just there. Then you go to sleep, instead of chanting, because it's so nice and warm. Lord Brahma approached the Lord, addressed him thus, "My Lord, please protect me from these sinful demons who were created by me under your order. They are infuriated with an appetite for sex and have come to attack me. My Lord, you are the only one capable of ending the affliction of the distressed and inflicting agony on those who never resort to your feet." That's the place where someone lives in hell, even in this material world, if they don't take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. My Lord, who can distinctly see the minds of others, perceived Lord Brahma's distress and said to him, "Cast off this impure body of yours." Thus commanded by the Lord, Brahma cast off that body. The body given up by Brahma took the form of the evening twilight. Now I'm just reiterating what I spoke yesterday. When the day and night meet, a time which kindles passion, the asuras, who are passionate by nature, dominated as they are by the element of rajas, took it for a damsel, whose lotus feet resounded with the tinkling anklets, whose eyes were wide with intoxication, and whose hips were covered with fine cloth, over which shone a girdle. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes this as just the complete illusion of the demons. It wasn't really a form like this at all, but because they were so addicted to sex life, this is what they saw. But actually that wasn't the reality. Then it's got 3-4 verses describing the attractive features of this beautiful damsel. And then it's saying how the yakshas and rakshas, as they approached her, "Oh, who are you, O pretty girl? Whose wife or daughter are you? What can be the object of your appearing before us? Why do you tantalize us, unfortunate as we are, with the priceless commodity of your beauty? Whoever you may be, O beautiful girl, we are fortunate in being able to see you while playing with a ball. You have agitated the minds of all onlookers," and it's described how they ravaged this girl. And it's good to understand how the twilight manifested, because they take that girl. And it's saying here, the asuras, clouded in their understanding, took the evening twilight to be a beautiful woman, showing herself in her alluring form, and they seized her. So that's the manifestation of evening. And now Lord Brahma is going to describe the manifestation of music. He says, with a laugh full of deep significance, the worshipable Brahma then evolved by his own loveliness, which seemed to enjoy itself, by itself, the hosts of Gandharvas and Apsaras. I think that verse is so beautiful. He evolved by his own loveliness that seemed to enjoy itself by itself. Internally, some very beautiful feeling. It's the sort of height of music. And with that, the Gandharvas, who represent the musical accomplishments in the heavenly worlds. After that, Brahma gave up that shining and beloved form of moonlight. Vishvavasu and other Gandharvas gladly took possession of it. Now very beautiful descriptions of his manifesting all these worlds, different aspects of the world. So this is all described in chapter 20. So we've come from the description of Sarga and Visarga, then to the pastime of Lord Varahadev. Now again, for one chapter, we're going back in summary of the creation by Krishna and the sub-creation by Lord Brahma. It's very wonderful to have understanding and knowledge of at least where all these parts, descriptions are in the Bhagavatam. And so on it goes on. So many different creations of the different entities in the different planetary systems. Describing how his hair came off his body in the form of snakes and so on. And all this is described in the 20th chapter. So I hope that gives some impression of the sequence throughout the Bhagavatam. I just want to finish with answering one question that Indira asked yesterday, which was very beautiful, about the prayers of Queen Kunti in the first canto. She asked, how is it that Queen Kunti was able to actually see the pastime of Damodar Leela? Because in the 8th chapter, in the prayers of Queen Kunti, she's glorifying this Damodar Leela. And she asked, how could she see that? She never saw it directly. Actually, in the commentary, it's saying that, Prabhupada is saying, that she saw a picture, the word is picture, of this pastime. She had an impression. And of course, all those people outside of Braj in Mathura, Dwarka, they would have heard of these pastimes going on. It's like even the fruit lady from Mathura, she heard of these pastimes. She came to see baby Krishna. So they're hearing of these pastimes. But the point is, whether they have faith sufficiently to believe the pastimes and to honor those pastimes is up to their adhikar. Like with Bhishma Dev, he would also hear these pastimes. It's described when he's on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he's receiving these arrows from Arjuna, and he's feeling that they're like the lovers' kisses in the kunjas of Vrindavan, that they're very soft. There's a whole description there in the Bhagavad Gita of that. So what is the degree of our faith in those pastimes? It's like today, many people, even living in Vrindavan, in different societies and so on, they'll hear about the esoteric pastimes of Krishna, but they won't really put that much faith in it. They would rather put their faith in something more direct, in the philosophy, etc. So depending on our adhikar to accept that. So Queen Kunti, it's described by Prabhupada that she saw a picture.
In meditation. She was meditating.
It just says picture. It doesn't say meditation. She had a picture. Is that's not the words of it.
But a picture is...
It's not like... She saw a picture, yes, in her meditation. If I tell you about something in the Himalaya, you immediately have a picture of a white snow-capped mountain, right? And I tell you, something's happening there, then you immediately have a picture of it. So someone had relayed this pastime to Queen Kunti, and she thought it was amazing because Queen Kunti is a Nitya Parika. She's an eternal associate of Krishna. It's described she doesn't, her body is not discarded. It's like the Pandavas' bodies are not discarded. They're Nitya Parikas. Someone like Vidura, his body remains here because he's not a Nitya Parika. He's a Devata. And also Bhishma Dev. He's a Vasu in a previous birth. And his body is also cremated on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He doesn't transcend the skies in that same body, the same way that Queen Kunti or the Pandavas do. So there's a great difference between these personalities all the way through. We should try and get an understanding of who all these, what is the nature of these different personalities, because they all have different purposes. But Queen Kunti, she's Krishna's auntie. She's definitely a Nitya Parak. Well, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says so. So that's my authority for that. Okay, so that was the answer for that question. Thank you very much, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Lord Varaha Ki Jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,